continued. So Some Audit is very pleased to have this yet another session, the 52nd session webinar, online webinar that we have got, live webinar that we hold on Analytics Wednesday. We have got 51 distinguished speakers who have come on this platform, spoken about analytics, spoken about artificial intelligence, processes, improvements, bots, how they've implemented analytics in their organization, case studies, frameworks. We have got some professors, we have got speakers from abroad. So today we have yet another distinguished speaker, Vijayalakshmi Suresh, who is the Vice President Internal Audit Voltas Limited, who's going to speak on assess, analyze, assure Voltas case study. So she'll share her thoughts on the frameworks and also on some way how they have done things at Voltas. Now, I would like to formally introduce Vijayalakshmi. I just want to point out that this webinar is, supported by the Government of Canada Trade Commissioner Service. Because Kbf is a Canadian company, this is supported by the Trade Commissioner Service from, Government of Canada. Earlier, we had held physical programs in the High Commission premises in Delhi, and I think that may start once the pandemic is going down. Now it may, we will start doing programs there where we can invite people and sit down and talk. Now I'd just like to formally introduce Vijayalakshmi Suresh. She is a chartered accountant, finance professional with 30 years experience in Tata Group, Voltas and Tata Sky. She's worked in MNCs like Shell, Coca-Cola, Parker, Hennepin, Diverted, and SCA Hygiene. Domain experience in corporate finance, treasury, taxation systems, risk management, and in Voltas, she's got experience in internal audit. So really a different perspective we'll get from her compared to all the other speakers that we've got. She's been a mentor and coach, conducted training for finance and non-finance personnel in basics of finance, corporate planning, code of ethics. She's passionate about internal audit ethics and corporate governance. So with that, all yours, Vijayalakshmi. Over to you, please.
Thank you for the kind words, Deepji. Good evening, everybody. Let me share my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope this is screen is visible and I'm audible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you once again, and we can start. So for today's discussion, I thought we'll just split it into three parts: assess, analyze, and assure. So I would like to share some of my experiences in the various companies that I've worked with: Tata Sky, Voltas now, SCA Hygiene Product, that's a European MNC in the cleaning and hygiene space. I've worked in Diverted, an engineering company called Parker Hannifin, and Shell several years ago. So it has been an interesting and varied experience, largely in the finance domain. And this is my first stint in internal audit. So in that sense, I am still an opening batsman. So this is my first innings in internal audit, and it's been a fantastic journey so far. And I thought it would be only apt to share some of the experiences with fellow professionals. So with that, let's move to the first idea of today's discussion, that is assess. So when we say assess, so Voltas, when I joined the company, this was the Voltas I knew. It was a leading air conditioning company in the Indian market, the #1 player. And that was largely what I knew about the company, that it was a financially strong and part of the Tata Group. But this is the Voltas as it is. So it is not just an AC company. The company is almost half of its businesses into projects. So in the domestic markets, you can see we do rural electrification projects, we do solar projects, we handle water projects for water distribution and water treatment. And the company also executes a lot of marquee international projects. So we've done the HVAC and MEP works for Burj Khalifa, for Ferrari World in the Middle East. The company is also a mining and construction equipment. So we have clients in the African continent, and it's also a large player in the textile machinery market. So these are dimensions of Voltas that I really did not have a very good view of when I joined the company. So we keep assessing things as we move on. So what drives the business? So before we start an audit, we need to understand the key business factors. What are the business drivers? So you could have external and internal drivers. External drivers could largely be the state of the global economy, how the Indian economy is faring, the geopolitical situation, especially we've been seeing after the Ukraine war. It has multiple dimensions across industries, be it logistics, be it commodities, metals, precious metals, food grains, and so many other sectors. So if you, it's like saying that you sneeze in one part of the world and you catch a cold in India. So these are the international factors which do not have, which you do not have a control over, but they control you. Similar to that, you also have several drivers within the company's domain. It could be the leadership of the company, the strategy that it has carved out for itself, the customer network, the value chain, and so on and so forth. So what we see as the SWOT analysis for a company, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities and threats for an organization, they would all be forming part of the business drivers. And from these, we derive key business information, which would be like the market size, the turnover, the profits, the market share, and so on and so forth. So these are the key business factors which we should understand about a business and a company, whether we are part of the finance domain or whether we are part of the audit practice. Some important KBF areas are: one would be the organizational environment, which is the external ecosystem of the company. You would also have organizational relationships. So the relationships that the company has with each of these entities. The competitive environment, so which are the competition, which are the rivals of the company in the marketplace, where are the smaller players that are becoming threats, and what is the blue ocean for the company, which means that the uncharted waters that the company can now look at. What is the strategic context that we are talking about? So to understand on what is a KBF, we need to consider the following three important factors. One, does it impact the business? So you could have many business factors, but unless it impacts the business, it does not become a key business factor. Second, more important for us, does it impact the risks and controls? And third, can we use this to prioritize our observations in our audit area? So if it checks these boxes, then we can conclude that yes, this is a key business factor that one needs to be aware of. Just on the lighter vein, so you see on the left hand side, this is a cricket match that's going on, and the scoreboard says you need 1 run and from 4 balls. So we think, wow, it's easy, and the batsman is all ready to hit a shot. Now you get an additional dimension, which now says you need 1 run from 4 balls, and the score is 322, 9 wickets down. And you can also see the batsman getting out. So is it really the end of story for the team? Wait and watch. So you see the picture on the extreme right. The batsman's stumps is knocked off, but you can see the bowler. It's a no ball, and so he has survived. And the match has changed its complexion. So the picture before, you thought it was a loss, and now it becomes a win. So you need to understand the context and the background and the real story as an auditor. So sometimes we also hear the word assessment, assess and assessment pretty often. And many of us are assessors. We have done assessments for quality and in several other aspects. So are assessments and audits the same, or are they different? To some extent, they are the same. But sometimes as auditors, it might be more useful if we wear the hat of an assessor. So an assessor actually, he or she would look at the process quality, an auditor would look at the process steps. The assessor would be more focused on the criteria guidance. Auditors are guided largely by checklists. The assessment purpose is to decide or to move ahead on the journey of excellence, whereas an auditor role, by and large, even today, is largely compliance focused. The assessor's focus generally is on opportunity for improvement. So the conversations with the client would be on the areas of improvement, whereas the auditor's highlights are generally around non-conformities to the management. The assessor's keen understanding of the business context is very important. Otherwise, the assessment is not productive. However, an auditor may or may not be influenced by the business context. He says, okay, this was the business scenario, but these are my observations. And the assessment is largely cues and culture based, whereas the auditor requires mostly heavy, hard evidence basis which the audit report is issued. So the assessment actually shows how the rules of the business are run, whereas an audit is actually highlighting the exceptions to the established rules. Both audits and assessments are important aspects of management, but as auditors in our career, since we largely focus on the audit and audit process, it would be actually nice once in a while if we look at audit as an assessment and take an overall contextual theme. Assessment is actually both an art and a science. And so identifying the right KBFs for a business, it actually helps us to play the right notes on a piano. Having completed the first part of assess, and once an auditor is able to understand the dynamics of the industry, the way the company is run, and what are the key business factors that drive the business and on which the company is measured, the next thing that he or she would need to do is get into the analysis. So what do we exactly analyze? So the data analytics in the maturity model, there are 5 different stages. So you have the initial stage where the company may have some level of data and some database decision making. Once it progresses, it becomes repeatable, and it is repeated across multiple pockets of the organization. Thereafter, it moves to the defined stage where the metrics of the company, metrics of performance measurement are defined, and further the company would evolve into a managed area where now there are not only systems that are established, there is a well-defined organization and a set of people who are running the data analytics. And the optimized is when you reach the peak where the company is completely data driven and all the decision making is data based. And we also have an architecture of data analytics. So before we get into data analytics or what exactly we mean by it, so data itself has multiple dimensions. So what is the data that we extract? Who extracts the data? What is the source of this data? How much do we extract? How often, or what is the frequency of data extraction? As auditors, we need to have 100% clarity on this. After the extraction, you move to the warehousing stage, where the scalability, the security, and the ownership of data becomes very, very critical and crucial. Post data warehousing, we move into the processing of the data. So data could be processed either on demand, or it could be a scheduled data processing. You could have predefined, or it could be a self-service. One also has to look out for false positives at this stage. And there are multiple languages that can be used, computer languages. It could be a structured query language, it could be Python, or it could be R. The data processing could be flexible or hard-coded, and the speed of data processing is also very essential. So the auditors also need to focus on how the data is processed within the organization. Post-processing, it results into visualization, where the outcome of the data is presented. So you need to know who your audience is, what kind of storytelling that we get into. For all the issues that we have highlighted, have we done a root cause analysis, or are we just throwing out the numbers? And it's dynamic because this is real-time data that we are talking about. And once we are able to give a dashboard or give a presentation, the next step, the final step, is the feedback, where you get back into history. We get learnings out of this entire exercise, come to the right conclusions and insights, and get on to a recommendation as to what are the things that the auditor would recommend to the client to get better value out of this analytics. In Voltas, we use IDEA tool for data analytics. So typically for sales, for instance, in a regular data analytics, you could have different product rates offered to the same customer. You could have analytics around turnover discount, bunching of sales at month end, credit notes analysis, data analytics around inactive customers, and incentive payments that are not in line with the sales, analysis of open sales orders that have not been fulfilled. So these are some of the regular analytics that we deploy. Sometimes these might also throw up certain red flags around, say, turnover-based discounts which are not given or given to customers who have not achieved the target. incentives given to sales employees, though they have not achieved their targets. A detailed analysis of sales to customers versus their outstanding balances. These sometimes indicate a continuous increase in the recoverables from customers. This could be an indicator of non-delivery of material to customer or other issues. So data analytics could throw up a lot of red flags, which could be a red flag, which could be potential fraud indicators, or this would indicate some issues in the process that we need to do a deep dive into. Similarly, for purchase, while the regular analytics would show different rates for the same items, duplicate payments or splitting of POs, the three-way match between a PO, GRN, and a bill, deviations from the last purchase prices, delays in getting the GRNs done in the system, or POs done which are confirmatory in nature, which could be in violation of the purchase policy. Or sometimes we also find GRNs done against deleted purchase orders, going into the analysis of aging of the open purchase orders. So these are some of the analytics that companies routinely carry out. But in a deeper analytics using tools like IDEA, we also get insights into the share of business trend, vendor master insights, because we as a company, we have tens of thousands of vendors, both for the projects and the air conditioning business. So it is not possible to manually do an analysis of the vendor master database. So a comparison or a check is done between the vendor PAN and the employee PAN, vendor bank accounts versus employee bank accounts, unauthorized changes to the bank details in the vendor master, blocking of inactive vendors and movement in inactive vendors. So these are deeper analytics that we do over a very large database. And believe you me, these vendor master analysis actually throws potential frauds or risks of potential frauds are highlighted here. In fact, I could share one experience where the one of the inactive vendors was used by an accounting person to book, let's say, fake bills, and by forged signatures, he booked the bills into the system and perpetrated the fraud. So this happened over several months, and the way it got found out was the actual vendor to whom the TDS was credited. He came back to the company saying that if this much of value of TDS has been deducted, it implies that I have done say 20 times that value in terms of service to the company, which I have not. So when we dug deeper, we found that there was a pattern of using inactive vendor codes and faking signatures. So a lot of frauds are perpetrated when employees have access to inactive vendor codes that are not blocked, because typically we look at these as hygiene issues, but these are potential fraud areas. So there are several tools of data analytics that one could use. You could have the spreadsheets, we could have programming languages that we spoke about. We also use BI. So the business intelligence dashboards are there. So we use it both for our projects and for our product business. So you have dashboards giving you real-time information about key project parameters or on the key business deliverables. And we also have certain audit tools. So there are plenty of data analytic tools, and it is up to the auditor to use the right tool for the right business. So this is a sample of some of the IDEA commands that we use. So we find, we do the analytics, and on the right hand side, you can see the results that come up, and then we pick up these samples. So IDEA is also used for sampling. We use the BI tools to measure sales performance. So it gives you multiple dimensions in terms of the region or the product category, person, discount availed, and so on and so forth. So having assessed the business environment, having assessed the key business factors for the company, the performance metrics, and using the right analytic tools, how does the auditor further go about giving the assurance to the client? So our core focus is internal audit, and assurance is the focus. We also do IFC testing. We also carry out investigations at the behest of management for all the Tata Code of Conduct complaints received. And we also have a small advisory role. So any new advisory role could be when we have a new business process that has changed or a business model that has changed. Internal audit is consulted as a valuable advisor for example, any change in the SOP, we do give guidance in terms of what the management could do better or to improve the controls. But largely the focus is on internal audit and on the assurance piece. So how do we plan, or what is the audit planning process? So the audit universe is actually the entire organization structure. This covers all the divisions. So we first look at the trial balance of the company, map all the processes and sub-processes, and we ensure that the entire geographical spread is covered by the audit plan. So having come to this end of this stage, we next move to discussions with our audit clients. So we take inputs from the board audit committee. We have a CMG, or the corporate management group, which is the top management of the company, comprising the MD, the CFO, the business unit heads, and so on. And also inputs are taken from statutory auditors. This is a consultative process where, together with the division business heads and the finance heads, we do the risk assessments. We also consider emerging risks in the business with inputs from the business units themselves. We also take them through the last 2 years audit observations and then come to a conclusion as to what are the risks that need to be addressed in our audit program. Thereafter, we move into the prioritization. We look at the new initiatives that audit should take up in the following audit plan. That has to be married with what are the business priorities. We look at the materiality, and we also look at past coverage. So the audit plan is eventually finalized. This is submitted to the audit committee, and once it's approved by the committee, the entire audit program for the year is calendarized, and we give a periodic progress update to the board audit committee, including highlighting the major audit observations, the risks, and the mitigations. So typically, when we cover the audit program for the air conditioning business, so on the order to cash, one would cover the key business factors. So it could be the sales order management, receivables and credit, product pricing, discount, rebates, account reconciliation, and management of key accounts. We also cover imports, where we would cover the sourcing agreements, customs clearance, freight forwarders, vendor bill booking, and payments. We have multiple factories. So the material requirement planning, the use of MRP in SAP system, the production operations, OEM operations, third-party manufacturing, inventory management, stat compliances, and cost accounting records are covered. We would also cover the marketing and advertising piece. Likewise, on the value chain, we look at the entire logistic and warehousing arrangements, the receipts and dispatch procedures, physical verification and reconciliations, storage, safety and compliance, and adherence to SLAs by our partners. We have a customer service operations for the post-installation and warranty and service calls. So we audit the call center operations. The company also has certain direct service centers. It also operates through service franchisees. So the service franchisee operations are audited. Their payouts are checked. We do a lot of data analytics around our CRM data, which is in CBIL, and also the spares for the air conditioners need to be managed. So this would be the complete coverage of the air conditioning business. And moving on to the project business. So this would cover the entire gamut of the project life cycle. So typically this would stretch over a 1 or 2 year period. So right from the project selection, where you could have large value projects with good progress. So when the project is accepted and it is in good progress, say 50% of the execution is achieved, that is when it is selected. The initial stage would be at the time of design and drawing and early stages of procurement. So as the project progresses, there are more areas that we can cover for audit. We also identify slow and non-moving jobs. So for us to do a deep dive into these projects to get learnings for management. We go through the bidding process, the entire contract management in terms of estimation of costs and revenue, the insurance, the compliance with contract condition, how do we manage change orders with the customer, sourcing of materials for the projects, then physically how the project gets executed, what are the project timelines, whether extension of time, EOT claims have been made with the customers, how are the budgetary controls exercised, and how does the project team handle amendments and extra works, because a lot of times in the project business, additional work is carried out on client instructions for which one would require written amendments and authorizations. invoicing and claims, raising of invoices, certification of works, the various contractual claims that have been raised with the client, and how the client is treating and disposing of our claims. On the inventory management, we cover security controls at site, how the project is progressing, physical versus financial, whether the inventory reconciliations are periodically carried out, and how are material transfers done between the stores and the project sites. Safety is again a very, very important parameter, and we look at the HSE requirements and compliances for every project. On the project management cost, we have the overhead and site expenses. The project accounting and finance would cover the gamut of accounts payable, bank guarantees, receivables collections, and so on. On the statutory compliances, we need to make sure that not only the company complies with the GST, TDS compliances, and the labor laws. As principal employers, one would also need to make sure that the subcontractors of the company are adherent to the prevailing labor laws. And finally, when the project comes to a closure, there needs to be a three-way reconciliation that is done. And we also look at how the project is eventually handed over, how the surplus inventory is dealt with, and how are the claims and settlement of account done with the client and done with our suppliers, and whether there are adequate provisions to take the company and the project team through the defect liability period for a project. So if you see, we call this a single audit. A project would be called a one audit, but in one audit, you have these multiple audits. So you would have procurement, you would have inventory management, you have sales, you have accounting, statutory compliance, project closures, bidding, contract management, commercial management, and so on. So it's actually 10 audits rolled into one. Then we call what we do a project audit. In fact, a couple of experiences I would like to share. During COVID, when there was a ban on travel, we had done a logistic audit where through Google Camera, using Google Camera, we actually visited virtually 20 of our warehouses. We actually took samples for physical verification. We checked the loading, unloading of material. We also looked at safety, we looked at compliances, and a lot of valuable insights we could get without actually physically traveling to 20 locations. And the insights that we could gather and the valuable inputs that we could provide to management through this virtual tour was much more than where we would actually visit 3 or 4 warehouses for a physical audit. Yeah, so how do we execute our audits? So the first important thing is to understand the expectations of the client very clearly. So we have an opening call, we have a welcome call, we circulate a brief approach note, and the deliverables are set and understood clearly between us and the auditees. Then we form a winning team, because we need a mix of right people. We need a mix of accountants, we need a mix of commercially savvy people. We also enroll guest auditors. For instance, in the international projects, you would have technical experts from one country helping the audit team to execute an audit in a different country to maintain the independence. So we have guest auditors joining the audit team on certain projects, and on certain areas we take help of subject matter experts. What is also important is we understand the business. So we do have documentation of the KBFs. We have multiple understanding calls with the clients. We run through the analytics with the client, and we also share the insights that we have. This is also followed by execution on ground. So we have visits to the sites, visits to the offices, the warehouse, the factories, and market visits. There are discussions held with the auditees, and evidence gathering happens. And finally, we believe that the impactful feedback makes all the difference. So the audit report that we draft, it would be concise, sharp, and evidence-based. There would be business orientation, and it would also have action orientation. Our communication is also multi-tiered, in the sense that we have extensive communication with the operating management. We have selective communication with the BU leaders, and we also take the critical and major points to the corporate management group and eventually to the audit committee. And the actions are aligned and agreed between us and the divisions. And no surprises or no negative surprises is the underlying motto for all of us. And finally, when we complete a project, we look at it as a learning and improvement opportunities. So wherever possible, at the conclusion of an audit, if we are away from our base location, We take it as an opportunity to celebrate with the team and the client. We seek feedback. We also discuss internally what went right and what could be better, and then get recharged for the fresh audits that we need to carry out. So we do have two main pillars that support us in the entire process. One, we use the audit platform called LARS, and IDEA as the analytic tool. So this is a brief overview of LARS that you can see. It's an audit platform. The audit plan, the allocation of audits, the working papers, the review of the audits, release of reports, tracking of open audit action items, and eventually releasing the dashboard and repositories. Everything is maintained in LARS. So it gives you the business wise, the BU wise audit plan, the risks audit, the aging analysis SBU wise, the breach of committed dates. It also maintains a tracker of the data requests made, what we have received, what have not been received, what is in progress, and so on and so forth. So through the electronic platform, we determine which area will be audited. The audits are assigned to the respective teams. We announce the audit calendar every quarter to our auditees. The auditees' leave plan is also tracked through this platform. The entire audit work is managed, and modifications are also done to the audit plan within the platform. And eventually, it holds the entire work of the audit team during the year. So in terms of the assurance, these are the four key deliverables for the audit team. Assurance is the center and the focus. We have process and control improvements. That is an outcome. That's a desired outcome of our audits. It also throws in cost optimization. So where we look at divisions across geographies. So we do benchmarking extensively in all areas, and this provides us a lot of opportunities to save costs. We also, through our audit, we find that there is working capital improvement that happens through reduction in debtor days and inventories, and on the compliances and governance is always covered in every audit. So two aspects we cover in every audit: adherence to procedures and policies and SOPs. This is covered in every audit, and also statutory compliances. So whether it is a procurement audit or a sales audit or a project audit or a factory audit, compliances are covered 100% thoroughly in each audit, and it's a positive confirmation is given to management on that area. So here it's an interesting cartoon. So you can see two crows looking at a scarecrow. So one crow concludes that this is a scarecrow and not a human being, because the guy is not looking at his phone. So at this level, so this kind of
You're muted, Vijayalakshmi. If you could kindly unmute yourself. If you could kindly unmute yourself. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in between there was some it got paused. The video was paused, and please.
Yeah. Is this okay now?
Yeah, but you'll have to. The screen is not. The slides are not visible. You'll have to put it up again. This is the. Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, are we good? Yeah.
Yes.
So when we interact with our clients, so we get clues as to, which is your end customer that you visit more frequently, who is a tough customer, or what are the challenges that you face. So that eventually gives us clues on the projects that we need to pick up for further deep dive. We need to also make sure that we are objective and unbiased. So for this, all our observations need to be backed by data and facts. So, and a suggestion would be to avoid doubts and allegations and always validate and clarify. So some things that we learn is where we are giving a positive assurance to a client, validate it a couple of times, and where we are giving a negative message or something that is not working well, it would be essential to clarify that. And one must always avoid the temptation to detect fraud. So what I see with a lot of enthusiasm, people find a couple of red flags or some issues, they go deep diving and they go with an assumption that yes, there must be some fraud over here. So our objective is not fraud detection, but to give an assurance to management. The other part of it is when we visit a client or when we start an audit, we need to make ourselves welcome to the auditee and give them the assurance that you're there to make a difference in the way they work. For that, what is most important is you understand the business, you understand the company and the culture, and communicate. Communication is most important. Tell the auditee what the auditee does not know, because quite often, we keep telling them what they already know. And having been on the finance side, facing both internal auditors and statutory auditors, I would always look at internal audit to tell me what we didn't know already. So if there's something that we already know and we are working upon it, the same issue highlighted in an audit report does not add much value. So all of us may have heard of the story of the consultant and the shepherd, where the consultant goes and tells the shepherd, okay, I'll tell you how many sheep you have. Will you give me your watch? So this shepherd says, okay, but I will tell you what your profession is. You're a consultant. The guy says, how did you find out? Because you tell me something that I already know and you charging me a fee for it. So I don't think we should be in that position. And our focus should now move from what can go wrong, because that's always been the focus. What can possibly go wrong to what should go right to make sure that the business objectives and the company's objectives are met. We need to communicate at all levels, at the level of the auditee, at the branch or the factory or the project site, at middle management, senior management, audit committee, the CEO, CXOs of the company. And most important, we need to engage very, very deep. A superficial engagement can be spotted very, very easily in today's day and age. And the credibility is actually enhanced and maintained only with a deep engagement between the internal auditor and the auditee. So that's when you become a trusted partner. So with that, I end my presentation and open to questions. And thank you for a patient listening.
Thank you very much, Vijayalakshmi. It was a wonderful, you've given hands-on, you've actually shared transparently, so much information about how an audit is being conducted and what you do at Voltas, which is great to know. There is a question from Rajesh Chakote where he says, you share the approach note with the auditee and, you may alert the auditee about things, so what's your take on that?
Okay, I would say the auditee is already alerted because these audits are carried on every year. So our approach is not new. Typically, the auditees know what we are going to do. What is more a surprise is how we deliver it. So over the last 5 years, I can say with confidence that the more we do data analytics and we cover the entire universe instead of a sample selection, the auditee clearly knows that nothing can escape our eye. So it's not really an alert that we are forewarning him as to the area in which we go, but what he does not know and what we need to tell them is where the controls are weak and where we can make them better.
Sure. Just one other question from my side. I find that how SQL or Python helps in the process of data analysis, madam.
We have actually not used these packages, but I have come across instances where these languages, these programs are used for data analytics. So depending on the size of the organization where you find an application, and you need to have bridges. So you need to have people who can communicate the business requirements to the programmers and make sure that they are able to do the analytics for you.
GRN means, okay, good receipt note. There's a question. I think I thanks. There's no other question. Video is paused. So I think I don't find any questions. So if you have any questions, please put it up here. But I have a question for all the participants. We talked about be a trusted business advisor. Yes, we just talked about in the presentation that if you find something wrong, you may not dive deep. So because we are not supposed to be finding frauds, we are supposed to be giving an assurance. But as an auditor, as an internal auditor, if you find something wrong, unless you deep dive and try to get to the bottom of those things, it will not be possible to unearth any integrity issues or frauds which are taking place for any organization. If you look at all the case studies also, whatever frauds have been uncovered is you found something which is not right. You, of course, trust, you work with Empower, work with the partners, but then if you have not found something wrong, if you have found something wrong, then you have to deep dive. So again, can you just elaborate on that?
Please? Let me clarify. So what I meant was one should not go with the objective of finding a fraud. So this is something that I have seen in a lot of auditors that go with a fraud detecting mindset. But deep dive 100%, unless one dives deep, you will not be able to, the slightest, smallest of red flags also should not be ignored.
Right.
And cover an area with multiple angles. For instance, if you have a project, for instance, you need to know how the project is being managed or supervised. So if it is supervised from the headquarters, we also look at the various, for example, the project review dashboards. How often was this reviewed? How many times have senior management come? And this especially is very critical because during the last 2 years, because of COVID and the inability to travel, many places you would find that senior management has not visited.
Right.
Yeah, so and this could give rise to say unhealthy practices. So there could be a lot of violations because of this. But a deep dive is 100% essential because unless you dive deep, you will not come out with a pearl of an observation. And unless you come out with, let's say, not less than brilliant observations, your client is not going to appreciate you for giving some routine 5 observations saying that this was not authorized, there was 2 signatures missing. That's not of value to them.
Absolutely. Right. Any other questions, please? I think you have this wonderful opportunity to speak to the chief auditor from Voltas. So any other questions, please? Okay, I think no other questions, but just out of curiosity, what is your team size and how does the internal audit at Voltas work?
We have a co-sourced model. Okay. So we have a partner with whom we execute our audit program. Right. So my team size is, we have a lean team. We are about 6 people. So right. Across geographies, so all of us are qualified chartered accountants, and we do extensive travel.
Great. Just one more question before I think we'll take this last question. Somebody has put it up. In this dynamic environment, how do we evolve as mature auditors when we execute audit steps with getting diverted from the audit objective? How do we enhance our thought process?
A deep understanding of the business. So I think that will actually drive and make sure that you stay on course. So once the audit is commenced and it's rolling, it's very, very important because it's a very interesting and very valid question that one does not get digressed along the way or go through the other path and stick to the audit objective as to what we sought to achieve in the audit. So what is my main audit goal? What am I supposed to achieve by doing 6 or 8 weeks of this audit? So have I covered the scope enough? Have I covered the transaction enough? Have I covered all processes? Am I missing out something? So if we keep track on the key business factors, on the key audit objectives, so we look at it as key audit objectives. So as long as we don't take the eyes off the ball, I mean, we need to look at the rear view mirror, but we should not get digressed because of some of the audit findings that we come along the way. So if there are findings that would require you to pursue it further, yes, go ahead and do a deep dive as much as necessary, but never take the eye off the ball. And with the electronic platform that we have, the audit team might be sitting somewhere in a Chennai branch, and we will be at head office. So the manager gets to review and we review. We do virtually a review every day or every alternate day. So continuous review is again very, very important. Otherwise, what would happen is the audit progresses, the team on ground would carry out the audit. And after 60-70%, when the senior manager or the head of internal audit would review and say, oh, you have not covered these 3 areas, or I would need you to look at this a little more deeply. So this also happens because of paucity of time, other commitments or engagements. But that's very, very important. Continuous review is important. So even if your boss doesn't have the time to review your work, I mean, demand time and make sure that it is reviewed. And that I would also do, because I do have my monthly meetings with my CFO and MD, where we give a rundown of what work we have done, what is in progress, and we take their inputs as we go, rather than wait for an audit to complete. There are flash reports that we issue to the CFO and MD, and where they have a particular, they have a input on a specific area where they say, okay, Vijay, we would like to go a little more into this, or this business is going to be our focus going forward. So put a little more attention in this area, make sure that this comes out clean. So we do this every month, whether it is online, people are traveling. So we take time out and make sure that, we communicate. So that communication should be kept ongoing. So I would communicate to my seniors, and likewise, we keep constantly engaged with the team. So we know how people are progressing, because if a team member auditor is sitting somewhere in a remote part of the country, he or she needs to know that the audit head is looking at his or her work, is actively engaged with the work, and keep giving inputs continuously. That becomes very important.
I think, thank you very much. I think thanks for so much clarity. That's the comment. Thank you very much, Vijayalakshmi. We will be putting up this video on the Sama YouTube channel. So I think that will be available to all of you to view. So I think since there are no other questions, I just want to thank you, Vijayalakshmi, not only for sharing thoughts about analytics, but also about the entire internal process that you follow at Voltas. It was clearly highlighted not only in your air conditioning business, but in your project business, which was a good takeaway for all the people who are going to view this presentation, to understand what all goes on into project audits. So thanks a lot for being with us today and sharing all that you have shared regarding the Voltas case study. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepji, and thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks to the audience for a very patient hearing.
Thank you very much to the wonderful audience. And next week, we have one more session next Wednesday, 7 p.m. So I look forward to all the participants to join again next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.